Have CB 56, excuse me, CB 56, 2024, an act concerning reporting for the purpose of providing for certain reporting requirements of the Department of Permitting Inspections and Enforcement on a quarterly basis and generally relating to the Department of Permitting Inspections and Enforcement. Mr. Battle, do you have any orientation for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So CB 56, as the title indicates, will require the Director of the Department of Permitting Inspections and Enforcement
I'm sorry,
provide.
Mr. Battle,
Yes,
hold
sir.
on one second. We need order here. Okay.
Thank you, sir. CB 56 will require the DPI Director to provide a monthly report by district to each council member with specific information, which includes the 20 most frequent complaints received by the department, 20 most frequent citations distributed by the department, the 20 most frequent that are responded to and paid off, assuming we're talking about citations, and then also 20 most frequent citations that are referred for legal action. And there is also the drafter will discuss some amendments that also require this information to be posted on the agency's webpage. But that's the overview, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you.
For terms of brevity.
And let me go to Ms. S.P. Glassman.
Sure. There's
Okay.
Most of the amendments in the bill are technical, but if you look at page 2, line 16, it just presents the information shall be electronically rendered in the open data website portal or DPI's website. So that's the
Okay. So everything. So the draft 2 is what you've incorporated. That's okay. Great. Thank you. Mr. Hurdle, did you have anything?
Not specifically. The drafter of the policy analysis fiscal impacts report generally is favorable to the piece of legislation. More transparency and having more access to data is generally good for the council and the administration. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Let me see. Let me go to the sponsor, Ms. Oriata.
Thank you. So the reasoning behind this legislation, I know for my community, I can assume for others, we have a lot of issues around, probably the number one complaint we always get are calls around something with enforcement and citations, and trying to get a hold of what are we really seeing citations being given for, or what are we seeing where they're paying them, where they're not paying them. I think the more information and data that we're able to collect individually in our districts, the easier it is for us to try to assess changes that need to be made. For me, one of the examples is a huge issue with the 24-hour tobacco stores and the LED lights and all these things, and kind of going back and forth of like, if the enforcement's happening, if it's not happening, where we're seeing more enforcement. I think it kind of goes to what you were talking about, Councilmember Fisher, about sometimes feeling like there's a focus in one area of enforcement versus the other in the community, but having the raw data, because the community could feel like, for one, that people aren't getting fines, but maybe the data proves that that's not true. Like the number one fine DPI is giving out is for the exact issue that they have. And the reality is that the people are just keep on doing it. And maybe that's because the fines are low. It gives us the ability to really look at what's happening in the community in a thoughtful way and have that information on hand and use that information to assess. So it kind of goes back to what Councilmember Burrows mentioned around his legislation around open data that he did last year to create that portal. What it didn't have and created space for is what kind of information and data do we want to collect. And so I just think that this could be a tool that is useful to us as council members and useful to the community to see.
Thank you. Let me go to the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Olson, and good morning. Yes. Again, So the administration is asking for to hold CB 56 2024, the proposed draft 2. I know Senior Advisor Lori Paris is present, and she's going to go over some of the questions, clarifying questions that she has or the agency has. And there's some questions, and Ms. Oriata, you are familiar with this, when the administration works with you on legislation, like we have with the overnight business legislation, CB 16. We're asking to hold this legislation so the administration can also discuss this legislation to make it a little bit better and more better to operate and carry out the functions and responsibilities. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Paris.
I think it's now is a good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair, good Vice Chair, and council members. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be heard today. So with respect to this bill, DPI would also need some additional clarification with respect to the bill, the purpose behind the bill, and what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm just going to go through several things that we see with respect to the bill that needs further clarification, or we would like to provide more information with respect to whether and how this bill should be considered. So first, there is some confusion in the bill because there's a monthly report and then there's a quarterly report. And just prior to get into the very specifics of the bill, the reporting function that's being asked here is extremely onerous based on our current regulatory and enforcement responsibilities. This is another administrative responsibility that we do not have the resources for. We don't have a performance management team to run these reports and analyze the data. Our IT systems don't capture the data in the way that this bill is asked to report. Specifically, I'm going to go to the actual the requirements, and I'm going to start with I think it should be, well, I'll look on the new draft. So it should be page 1, line 21, where it talks about the 20 most frequent complaints. The 20 most frequent complaints can come from a variety of ways. We get complaints from 311, we get complaints from the county council, we get complaints from calls, we get complaints from walk-ins, and that data is not in one place. So to ID, and then to take that data, if we could even put a number to the number of complaints, then to do a summary of the types of complaints, that is going to be extremely onerous, extremely difficult, and it's going to change because it could be we get 1,000 complaints about one project that the community's up in arms in 1 month, and that's not going to represent what the actual work that we're doing. So I think that is extremely broad. It's going to be hard to interpret and hard to produce. Also, culminating that data on a monthly basis is extremely time consuming. Our IT system would require significant upgrades. And again, then we would have to not only be able to start collecting the data, report out on that data, and that's going to be a performance management function. Second of all, with respect to the 20 most frequent citations, as I indicated earlier on the previous bill, we enforce several codes. We enforce subtitle 4, 9, 11, 13, 23, and 32. To be able to take all that information and aggregate it in one, we don't even capture our data that way. We capture our citation, we capture what is the basis for it, and some citations could have 5 to 10 different violations. We also, not only in addition to our citations, we have civil citations, administrative citations, we have stop work orders, and we have notice of violation. So we have all these enforcement tools that allow us to address activity that is not in compliance with the code. So again, this is extremely, extremely onerous with respect to culminating this data and again, tracking the data, putting it in something that can be reported out monthly. And it says monthly to the council members, but are we now going to have to do different districts or what is that going to look like? So there's a need for more information on that. With respect to the most frequent citation responded to and paid off. Again, responded to, what does that mean? Does that mean they responded to it by abated and it's now resolved and they've paid? Does it mean that they've requested a hearing, whether it's an administrative hearing, whether it's the Board of Appeals, whether it's civil court, district court? Where is that? What is responded to? And as with respect to paid, as you know, because we've had these conversations during the budget hearing, is payment for these citations are all over the place. You can pay in court, you can pay it at the finance department, you can pay with us. So again, that information is not really accessible with respect to all of the citations. And so it is something that we are looking at and figuring out how to be able to present more with respect to how things are paid, but there's a significant amount of money that we're not in control of with respect to paid. And lastly, the 20 most citations referred for legal actions. That information could potentially go into attorney-client privilege because we actually may refer something to the Office of Law for Enforcement, and there may be a legal decision on not to do something. So again, there's going to be a need for more information behind this request for legal actions. Also, if you want to know what's actually been presented at court, those are public records. There's a court docket, there's a monthly docket for the code docket, and so that information is readily accessible. So we're taking all of this information. We don't control a lot of it where in the multiple systems, and then trying to put it in one place. There would be a significant need to upgrade an IT system that we are just finally rolling out. Things are moving, and then to change and kind of be able to figure out how we're going to put this data in, collect it, and report out. So we think that this bill is extremely onerous. There's a time component to it. There's a cost component and a staffing component. And lastly, again, the quarterly reporting, monthly reporting to whom? To the chair, to the council, to the districts. And then if we're going to have to separate that data by districts based on kind of what I've heard, I think that is something that we need to consider. So I think this is an opportunity to, if the bill could be held, to have further discussion, because it really is something that it would be setting another administrative burden on DPI that we could not meet. And then it's going to be something we need to focus on our core functions, and that is enforcing the code.
Before I go to Vice Chair Harrison, I wanted to ask a question. You mentioned the new software, is that the Momentum?
So, yes, Momentum.
Does that have the ability to sort? And it does not have the ability to sort.
So the way I can kind of explain it is we can put in the citations, but it doesn't sort it. So it's like a citation can have 10 different violations. You go to a property, I'm going to give an example. If you go to an apartment building, you may see 30 violations. Citation can have 10 of them on there. Then, or you go for illegal inspections, same thing. You go to a construction site, there'll be 10 different violations, and it's not cited, it's not sorted.
So it's not done by violation, it's done by property, by proper address.
It's done by property address, and then being able to pull out that data for the top 20.
Okay. So let me. I think that the request is. I mean, the data is very important, and I do think that we as a council, as a legislative body, we do want to know a lot of the answers to these questions. And I really do appreciate, Councilmember Moriarty, you bringing this forward, because I think that this is, we can't address the things without knowing, the global extent of the problem. I'm hearing some technical things that I definitely want to understand more about. I do think this is a good bill. I think we might need to dig into this a little bit more, and how the Momentum system works, and if there's a patch that you can do to get somehow figure that out better. But let me turn to Mr. Harrison.
So I got a comment and a question. So thank you for expressing kind of the challenges that we face when it comes to data collection. You talked about operational staffing, you talked about an infrastructure and technology challenge, and then you talked about also legal parameters as well, and being able to flush that out, what is accessible, what needs to be protected. It would be very helpful to us to give us a cost analysis on this. When I say cost analysis, a data analytics person, how many would you need operational staffing wise? It would be helpful to understand the technology infrastructure problems. And colleagues, let me just say this. I had to go to DPOD for something, and I'll just say that the customer service at DPOD, it was very helpful, but even from the Momentum system, as they're working through some of the kinks in it, it is going to take some time for improvement of that, and just how the information is collected and streamlining the process. Because if I I'm being honest. If I did not have the help, I would have been lost. And that puts a strain on operational staffing for the average person to be able to understand. So making that system a little bit more computer friendly, it would, I'm sure that they're going through the kinks to make that happen, but it just from that standpoint, customer service, that they're working through that. So I would just say that if you could get us that information, and technology cost is important. Maybe we bought a system that before we bought the system, we're going to be real, that these are some of the questions that we should have asked to incorporate how we move forward with that. Ms. Paris?
Well, I would just say thank you for the customer service compliments. We worked hard, but you're correct. I mean, we built the system, and it's a very good system.
Yeah.
But as you know, I mean, every system you have you're going to have upgrades, you're going to have kinks, and you're going to have needs to do improve. And again, the things that we're asking here, this was not the purpose of the system. The purpose of the system was to get to the permitting and licensing business functions that we do for the regulatory. So you're absolutely right. And so these are the questions we will be working with our IT department as well as Director Gibson with respect to what that cost would look like, because it's wonderful. We all love data. And there's data that the county executive puts out with respect to all of the key performance indicators with respect to each agency. And so there's always a desire for more data, but you got to have clean data, reliable data, something that you can report out regularly, because if we're reporting out data that doesn't actually reflect what's going on, that's not helpful either. It's just numbers, and the numbers mean nothing. So I'm sorry.
I do have a question about that data then. So for data storage, okay, us controlling the data storage, the reason why I'm concerned, if you outsource it to another company, the other company can always make you add to the a la carte menu and basically charge you more, right? So meaning that we got to keep on going back to them and paying out more money to be able to have control over our data anytime we want to make system changes. And so that is a very big sticking point for me, because if they're controlling our data, that means we will always be spending when it comes to that. So that has to deal with financial technology upgrades. So if you get an answer to that too.
Yeah, and I want to go to Councilmember Oriata.
Yes. This is a piece of legislation I'm definitely willing to work with the administration to figure out how to make this work. But I think having the data is so important. I think you can't make decisions unless you can see the boards take a step back and really understand what's happening. And I know because the administration did a prioritization on enforcement, and they said it was based on the top complaints, and it was also based on the top areas where those complaints were had. If I go on the website, the county executive rolled that out. So I say that to say there's somewhere that there was some amount of information that was collected that the county executive had access to that allowed her to prioritize this. I think she called it an enforcement blitz or something. I'm not familiar with the exact name of the campaign, but it was advertised as being the top issues of enforcement. And it was also advertised as how they selected where they were going to do it based on the top complaints. And so also the goal is like we want to make sure we have access to that information as well. So I do hear that they're saying they don't know how to do it and sort it, but this information was already globally put out there as top issues, as top areas. So I do feel like there's a disconnect there, unless there's a disconnect on what was advertised.
Yeah.
And if that was true.
Yeah.
But so I just say I'm willing to work with the administration. But from what the county executive said, there's a way to sort this data. So I just think we should have access to it as well.
No, thank you.
And the public.
Ms. Oriata, and I think those are all important points. So I know Ms. Skinner had something to say, but I know that Ms. Oriata has indicated to me that she wants, and to the body, that she's willing to work with DPI and with the administration on this. I would like you to do that. But if you have something else to say, please say it now, and then this is our last item for today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Olson. Real quick, so just the IT piece. I know Director Wanda Gibson did actually flag this specific piece of legislation, so I at least wanted to make it clear, or at least on the record, that if she's not present at the next hearing, if this is held, we're going to at least get that information over to you guys regarding, especially the points Mr. Harrison indicated, the IT infrastructure cost, the outsourcing, storage, retention issues that we probably need to look into, but also more importantly, or just as important, is the personal identifier information from residents that could end up on this data or website portal. We need to make sure we get law or somebody involved on that to make sure what information can actually go up on that. So that's all I wanted to add, that we have our director looking into that.
Thank you. So, I would, Mr. Burrows.
I'll be very brief, but I definitely love the spirit of this bill, and I understand that DPI has staffing limitations, but I think it's important for the public and the council to know what is being enforced and what is not being enforced, and if there's a disparity in enforcement. I drive around, I still see the LED liquor store, tobacco store lights all over my district. I see them all over Councilman Moriarty's district. At one point in time, I thought, once again, the southern part of the county is being treated than other parts, until we had our tour and I saw the same issue in Councilmember Fisher's district. And so, to the extent that we have knowledge and information about what is and what is not being enforced, that level of transparency alone will bring about some accountability. And generally, and also, I refuse to believe that our systems are so screwed up, or we don't have enough intellectual capacity to figure out how to properly sort data. That's not what our residents deserve. And so I believe that we can work together to increase the transparency in this regard. It also will help educate the council in ways to support DPI. Because right now it's a mystery. I know for sure DPI is working very hard. I appreciate the responsiveness of all the folks in your division. But if we see that there is a complete lack of enforcement in one area, that's something that perhaps the council could work together on to ensure that we fill the gap in some ways. I was talking to you all, but okay. I'll end my comments because they're not paying attention anyway.
We heard you, Mr. Burrows. We're mothers. We multitask very well. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Okay. I was going to make a motion to
I'll
hold, but
I was going to make it too. So
okay.
yeah.
I move we hold this bill.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion, a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Olson,
Aye.
Councilmember Barrows,
Aye.
Councilmember Fisher,
Aye.
Vice Chair
I
Harris.
vote aye.
Motion carries 4-0.